Hi everyone, Chad Pitts again from the Iowa Golf Association, and we're going to take just a short time here to cover the dropping rule. Dropping is something that we do fairly often in the game of golf, whether it's because we found ourselves on a cart path or hit the ball into a penalty area and are taking relief. Dropping is a fairly routine thing, so we wanted to cover the basics of that really quickly. And so it's Rule 14.3 that deals with dropping a ball in the relief area. We're going to cover a few different topics related to that. But first, let's go through the definition of what a drop is. The definition of drop is to hold the ball, let go of it so that it falls through the air, and you have to have the intent for the ball to be in play. If you are simply holding onto a golf ball that you accidentally drop, or a ball falls out of your bag, that's not a drop in the rules of golf because you had no intention of putting the ball into play. Each relief rule that we are dropping under is going to identify a specific relief area where the ball has to be dropped and come to rest. Many times this is going to be a 1 club length area. There are some times where it might be 2 club lengths. But just keep in mind that the ball has to be dropped within that area, and it also has to stay in that area. In other words, come to rest in that area. It has to be done from knee height now. And what's knee height mean? It means knee height when you're standing up. It has to be dropped so that the ball falls straight down without the player throwing it, spinning it, rolling it, any other sort of influence onto the ball that might affect where it would come to rest. So in other words, just drop it straight down. And keep in mind that the ball has to fly through the air and cannot touch the player's body or any of your equipment before it hits the ground. If it touches your body or your equipment after it hits the ground, that's okay as long as that wasn't done intentionally with the idea of influencing where the ball would end up. Well, let's talk about the relief area. The relief area is the area where a player must drop a ball when taking relief under a rule. Many times it's 1 club length, sometimes it's 2. And its size and location are based on these 3 factors. There's going to be a reference point. The reference point's going to depend on the rule you're operating under, but there's going to be a reference point every time you're creating a relief area. The size of the relief area measured from the reference point, like I said, it's going to be 1 club length or 2 club lengths. Usually it's 1. And then any other limits on the location of the relief area, such as what part of the golf course does the relief area have to be in. All right, when we talk about a club length, what are we talking about exactly? Well, a club length for you is somewhat individual, but it's always going to be the longest club in your bag that's not a putter. For most of us, that's our driver. But if we don't carry a driver for some reason, it's our 3-wood or whatever the longest club in our bag that's not a putter is. That defines a club length for us. So for example, if the longest club other than a putter a player has during the round is a 43-inch driver, that means the club length for you for that round is 43 inches. We use club lengths in addition to defining our relief area, also in defining our teeing ground of the hole we play. We can do 2 club lengths back from the tee markers, so that's another spot where club lengths are used. Dropping ball in a relief area. This rule applies, this is 14.3, applies whenever a player must drop a ball in taking relief, including when the player must complete taking relief by placing a ball. So we'll talk about that in a moment. And if you watch the conditions affecting the stroke video, you found out that the relief area is one of the conditions that affect your stroke, and therefore you're not allowed to improve those conditions. And so we have to be careful about improving the relief area before or when we are dropping a ball under a rule. Something that's new in 2019 was new last year, and certainly is still the case in 2020. You can substitute a ball. You can, anytime you're dropping under a rule, no matter what the rule is, cart path, penalty area, unplayable ball, you are going to be allowed to substitute another ball if you'd like. You can still use the same ball, but if you'd like to substitute, you can. So this means that the player may use any ball each time he or she drops or places a ball under this rule. 14.3b tells us that the ball has to be dropped in the right way. What does that mean? There's sort of three things we're going to look at. First of all, the player themselves have to drop the ball. The caddy can't drop them for them. Another player can't drop it for them. You yourself have to be the one who drops the ball. The ball must be dropped straight down and from knee height and cannot touch you or your equipment on the way down. And then the third thing is you have to strike the relief area. So the right way means you're dropping the ball, you're dropping it from the correct height and in the correct way, and that the ball is being dropped in the right place. Again, you have to drop the ball. Nobody else can do it for you. The ball has to be dropped from knee height. It's illustrated in the pictures on the right. So whether you're doing it as both of those would be considered okay. Ball has to fall straight down. Can't put any influence such as spin or throwing it or rolling it to affect where the ball would come to rest. And just be careful that the ball doesn't touch you or your equipment before it hits the ground, so on the way down. What does knee height mean? Well, knee height means the height of the player's knee when in a standing position. So the two pictures that are on the far right certainly are knee height. The third picture is also knee height, even though that's not exactly where his knee is while he's dropping. If he is standing straight up, the yellow lines indicate that that's where his knee would be, and therefore it is an okay drop. The ball has to be dropped in the relief area. The player, doesn't matter where they stand, they can stand inside or outside the relief area, but the ball, when it is dropped, has to strike the course in the relief area. If a ball is dropped in a wrong way, which means they violated one of those three things, maybe they didn't drop it from knee height, or it touched their foot before it hit the ground, or the caddy dropped it, not the player, that would be considered a wrong drop, and you'd have to do it over. And there's no penalty for that wrong drop as long as you correct it. And there's also no limit as to how many times you can do that. So if your caddy dropped it for you, that would be a wrong drop, and then you realize you're going to correct it, and then you go to drop it, and you absentmindedly drop it from shoulder height instead of knee height. That's another wrong drop that you're allowed to correct. But we don't care how many times you kind of mess it up in that way. There's no limit. A ball dropped in the wrong way does not count as one of the two drops required before a ball must be placed under the rule. So if you do drop it in the wrong way and don't realize it and go ahead and make the stroke, if the ball was played from where it was supposed to be played from, meaning from the relief area, the player is going to get a penalty stroke for dropping it in the wrong way. But if the ball, in addition to dropping it in the wrong way, also was played from outside the relief area, that is what we call playing from a wrong place, and you're going to get a total of 2 strokes. So let's say you're dropping it in the right way. We have this stipulation that the ball has to come to rest in the relief area. Makes sense. It's where you're supposed to play from. It's where the ball has to end up. So you've completed taking relief when you've dropped it in the right way and it remains in the relief area. And just to clarify, if the ball is sort of half and half, in other words, half of it's in the relief area, half of it's not, or basically any part of it is in the relief area, then that ball is considered to be lying in the relief area, so that would be okay. That would be a good drop. But remember, we have this reference point that we use depending on the rule. It's what's constituting the reference point is going to be a little bit different depending on the rule you're operating under. But typically, when we drop, we aren't going to be allowed to go closer to the hole than the reference point. So this diagram here shows that even though the ball is in the relief area per the clarification we just talked about, because part of that ball is closer than the reference point, that would not be allowed. That would be violating one of the conditions, which is we can't go closer to the hole. I do want to go back and cover one thing on the dropping in the relief area. The proper procedure, if you drop it the right way, meaning you drop it from knee height, you're the person who's dropping it, and it strikes in the relief area. If you do that correctly, but the ball rolls outside of the relief area, that's what we call a good drop that didn't stay where it's supposed to. So that drop counts. You would drop it again, and if it does that again, where it doesn't stay in the relief area or goes close to the hole, for instance, you would, as long as they're good drops, you drop twice. And after the second drop, you would place the ball where the ball struck the course on the second drop. So that's different than accidentally dropping from shoulder height or dropping a ball in the wrong way. It didn't strike in the relief area initially. Those are drops we don't count. There's an unlimited amount of those you can do. But if they're good drops, you dropped it from knee height, you dropped it straight down, it didn't strike you or your equipment, but it keeps rolling outside of the relief area. We're only going to do that twice, and then we're going to go place the ball where it strikes the course on the second drop, and then proceed on. So that's dropping. Hope you enjoyed it. That's certainly not the entire Rule 14, which is a really big rule. So if you need further information or clarification on anything, please reach out to the Iowa Golf Association.